The invasion of Cuba was codenamed Operation Zapata, and the Central Intelligence Agency acquired 2 vessels from the Navy as for the main command vessels for the operation.
So much for what they knew about Mexican and Cuban politics.
Yeah. Well, the 2 vessels they acquired, they renamed the Houston and the Barbara. All right? So you have Operation Zapata, and you have 2 command vessels, the Houston and the Barbara. In 1963, George Bush Sr. was vice president of Zapata Oil Corporation in Houston, Texas, and he had a wife named Barbara. This is a rather astonishing set of coincidences. Then, in 1988, a declassified document from the Federal Bureau of Investigation described a meeting between a military intelligence officer and a Mr. George Bush of the CIA concerning the effect of the Kennedy assassination on the Cuban exile community in Miami. And then
The effect of the Kennedy assassination?
Yes. How would the Cuban exiles
react?
And of course, the Cuban exile community in Miami at that time was overwhelmingly under the control of the Central Intelligence Agency.
Right.
Then in 1992, a second memo emerged explaining that a Mr. George H.W. Bush of 5525 Briar, Houston, Texas, I mean a very specific identification,
Right.
had called the called the FBI with information about a possible conspirator in the Kennedy assassination. So these 2 memos suddenly
Opened up.
George Bush to an episode that nobody thought he had any connection to.
Right.
And then George Bush became director of the Central Intelligence Agency under Jimmy Carter, just in time for the Central Intelligence Agency to purge their files of information on Lee Harvey Oswald. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, while he was director of the CIA, Ambassador Letelier from Chile was assassinated in Washington, D.C., apparently as part of Operation Condor.
Well, at least they had the right bird with the right part of the planet.
And in the year 2000, the Chilean government tried to question George Bush about this, but he declined. He's a very modest guy.
No thanks.
He didn't want.
Thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah.
Through our entire lifetimes, basically, and it seems to me that Dulles was one of the real first authors of this kind of thinking. Would you agree, Alan Dulles?
One of the key bad guys in our history. Yeah.
And would you say that George H. Harold Walker Bush is another key bad guy?
Well, yes and no.
Did he do it more as a kind of a Yaley skull and crossbones kind of, okay, let's go along with what the guys are doing?
No, I think you have to view Bush the way you view a lot of other characters who are peripheral to the agency itself. They have connections. They know people. Mm-hmm. They are involved in operations. They are witting. But they're not on paper in the CIA files.
Right.
So that if anybody asks, the CIA can say, oh, no,
No, but I'm not talking.
I'm not
talking about what's follow downable. I mean,
right.
Also Harriman.
Right.
Harriman was
Averill Harriman.
Averill Harriman was a big dude in this with Dulles and all that sort of thing. So it's hard to tell where the splits occurred. I mean, JFK was friendly with Harriman's. Clinton, I think, boffed the ex-wife, frankly. I don't know if you could say that on this station. But anyway, so you really do need this book and your book are both useful in showing the incredible interweaving of both individuals and sides of society that were covered. When I read this stuff about Woodward, frankly, I just wanted to throw up my hands.
Right.
You know, Woodward of the famous Bernstein and Woodward, All the President's Men, yada, yada. Read this book and you'll find out that he was also a
Right.
CIA operative.
Well, before he became a famous reporter,
Yeah.
Bob Woodward was in naval intelligence. He was lieutenant in naval intelligence.
Naval intelligence seems to be a source for most of these guys, by the way.
Naval intelligence has actually been the longest and probably the most insidious of the intelligence agencies in operation in the United States since our American Revolution.
Since Pearl Harbor.
And so you have this. What you have here is basically an account of how the intelligence community gradually came around to the position that it was easier to manipulate the domestic population than it was to manipulate foreign populations. It was easier to lie to the American people and get them to go along with stuff than it was to make Khrushchev do what we wanted him to do or to make Castro do what we wanted him to do.
Hence the title of your book, How the West Was Lost.
Right.
How we lose our sovereignty as citizens
So I
to
found
these unseen forces.
I found Baker's book really interesting in that respect because he goes into considerable detail about how the agency manipulated information about a lot of key events.
Right.
Like Watergate, for
Right,
example.
right.
And the JFK assassination, the events surrounding the rise of the Shah in Iran, and to a much lesser degree on more domestic things like the savings and loan crisis
Right,
and the Bush family connections to that.
right.
And then, of course, you go right on into the oil business, the wars against Iraq, all the way up into Junior's war against Iraq.
Right.
And the manifest lies told about that over and over again. You know, we weren't there for the oil, of course. We were there to spread democracy or to protect women's rights, or we were there for almost anything except the oil.
Right. Well, Jerry Smith, I can't tell you how much I appreciate your preparation for this interview with the fellow who's
Who's not here?
who's not here. But I do, I think like you, I think this book is a welcome addition to putting all of this that you've been working on for so many years together between two covers, and that it does collaborate what you've written for so many years, and I'm happy for you for that point alone. But I know that we can have yet another chance to talk about this on the air, and I want to make sure that we did get that chance.
You made the point at the beginning, and I'll just end with that same kind of point, that people don't, it's difficult for people to confront this material because it forces them to make a conscious realignment in their own minds about their connection to the government that protects them. It's easier to imagine things are going all right if you do not know that these fellows are consciously operating against you.
Yeah. On that note, Live from the Heartland says thank you to all of you for listening and for all of you here in the audience right here in the Heartland Cafe.